This is NTV.
Thank you, our viewers, for keeping with us. I'm Karaga Baldwins, and we're coming to you live from the Compassion International Conference Center. And thanks indeed for being with us through the news bulletin. We feel there's an urgent matter that needs to be indeed discussed and dealt with in quite some comprehensive detail. And for this particular matters, we're going to have a discussion in-house here as a talk show. Let's have this preface just to guide us on the framework of the discussion.
The World Bank came up with the Ease of Doing Business project in 2002 that provides objective measures of business regulations and their enforcement across 190 economies and selected cities at the subnational and regional level. It looks at domestic and medium-sized companies and measures the regulations applying to them through their life cycle. The project report provides quantitative indicators on regulation for starting a business, dealing with construction permits, getting electricity, registering property, getting credit, protecting minority investors, paying taxes, trading across borders, enforcing contracts, features of a labor market regulation, and resolving insolvency. The latest 2018 report scores Uganda as number 122nd against the other 190 economies, a decline in ranking from position 115 in the 2016 Ease of Doing Business report. In a more detailed breakdown, the report illustrates the ranking in various quantitative indicators of regulation as following. Starting a business, position 165. Dealing with construction permits, position 148. Getting electricity, 173rd position. Registering property, 124th position. Getting credit, 55th position. Protecting minority investors, position 108. Paying taxes, 84th position. Trading across borders, 127th position. Enforcing contracts, position 64, and resolving insolvency, 113th position. One of the institutions mandated with the task of improving the ease of doing processes in Uganda is the Uganda Registration Services Bureau. It is a semi-autonomous statutory body established by the URSB Act, Cap 210, to implement the relevant laws, provide registration services, collect and account for all revenue provided for under the relevant laws, and more specifically, responsible for the following functions. Business registration, which includes registration of companies, business names, partnerships, legal documents, debentures and chattel securities. Intellectual property rights registration, which includes industrial designs, geographical indications, patents, utility models, trademarks and service marks, copyright and neighboring rights. Civil registration, which includes registration of marriages, civil, church, Muslim, Hindu and customary, registration of Muslim divorces, licensing of churches to celebrate registrable marriages, and issuance of single status letters. To act as official receiver in insolvency matters. Collection of non-tax revenue. Tonight, in relation to the functions of URSB, we want to probe the progress made in their effort to contribute towards the ease of doing business environment, to explain why Uganda's rankings dropped by 7 positions between the 2016 and 2018 reports. This show is proudly brought to you by NTV in partnership with the Uganda Registration Services Bureau. Join us on Twitter and Facebook platforms to contribute to this discussion.
And you're welcome. Thanks for keeping with us. I am once again Karaga Baldwins, and this is NTV. And straight away, let me just introduce my panel to help us delve into this policy matter of the ease of doing business in Uganda. At my extreme end, I have Andrew Bakiza, the chairman Ease of Doing Business Committee. Andrew, you're welcome.
Thank you, and thank you, viewers. Welcome to the talk show.
Indeed, you're welcome. And right next to me, on my left, is Dr. Peter Ngatejize, Head, Private Sector Development Unit, Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. Dr. Peter, nice to see you once again.
Thank you very much. Nice meeting you, and good evening, viewers.
Okay, so straight away, Andrew, help explain this particular anomaly that there's a lot of investment having been done. I was here last year discussing this same phenomenon with a lot of, applause that and accolade that Uganda was performing very well in the Ease of Doing Business report. And we were in position 115. Right now, we're position 122. So what caused this particular dip?
Yeah, thank you, Baldwin. We do appreciate that there is a decline on Uganda's rating on ease of doing business, as you stated, from 115th to 122nd. There is a number of factors that bring up this. Among others, the different methodologies used at different in different years. There was a bit of change of methodology, which can affect a country depending on where you perform best. As well stated, these are 10 indicators, and each of the indicators are rated differently, and there is what you call that when they are rating that the distance to the frontier. It's a methodology used based on each of the indicators, and in the aggregation, they come up with the position of the country. If there is a change in methodology in one indicator, it can heavily impact on your position. However, again, while Uganda is doing its best to improve the ease of doing business, of course, the other countries are obviously equally striving hard at trying to improve their ranking. So Uganda may have improved on the presumption that the others were held constant. Again, that's what the distance frontier does. It's an indicator which can show what would be your position in case other countries were held constant. And when you put in the new figures based on your performance, you can realize that you have improved. But you must be mindful that other countries are also improving equally or better, and that can make you seem to have gone back, much as you may have made a number of improvements or changes. Again, the reforms, some of the reforms...
But just a slight interjection. You see, Rwanda was number 54 in 2017. We perused through this particular report with Dr. Peter the previous year, and Rwanda was number 54th. Right now, it's number 41st. So unless you're making an indictment that in the region that actually Rwanda is doing far much better in terms of its competitiveness improvement, it will not be tenable for us to accept you. So what was the difference in methodology? Because it seems...
Whereas that cannot be ruled out, that possibly Rwanda could have improved seriously. But we must also appreciate the fact that even simple publicity and sensitization of the public can improve your performance, because when World Bank is making assessment, it's going to go to the user, which sometimes it goes to the legal firms, and give them the questionnaires in which they feel. So simple poor sensitization can make you be seen as if you are not performing well, whereas in fact you have done well. In fact, this is some of the reason where we have said, hold on a bit. We have made so many reforms. We are very, very confident a number of changes have been made, but the end user is not aware of these new changes. And that's why we come to you and to the media and to everywhere we can in order now to bring the public to know the reforms, which reforms have been made, how is it adding on in improving of the ease of doing business. So Uganda as such may be seen to have gone back or to have deteriorated on the performance of doing business. But when you see the reforms made, when you see the speed of say starting a business, for example, if I use one of the indicators, you realize that we used to register a company, say in a 2 weeks, 3 weeks, sometime back, but we do it in 4 hours. Despite that, we seem to have declined. In actual sense, we have improved, but when you go to some end user, he may not be aware that this is a new changes. So in all these reforms being done, we are doing much better, but knowledge of it. I would give another example on resolving insolvency. It's one of the indicators, and we seem not be doing well. That indicator, the World Bank looks at it. Should you have a different law that on resolving insolvency? Sorry about that.
Resolving of insolvency.
Insolvency. The law we have, it seems some people may not be aware that it caters for them. So the World Bank, when asked that, do we need a new law or do we keep this law? The end user is not aware that the law in place really caters for all the minorities and the big organizations. And the tendency, the World Bank will think that, oh, hold on a bit, the law on resolving insolvency is insufficient. And because of that, you get penalized about that.
Okay. So we're going to come back later on the reforms, on the specific reforms that are supposed to address these very indices. Let me first get in Dr. Peter here and put you into the framework of the East African region performance in this particular report. Rwanda, as I've said, is 41st. Kenya is 80th. And both of these countries earlier on were actually at a far lower number, rather a higher number in terms of negative performance. Uganda is 122nd, which is the third best performer in the region. Then Tanzania 137th and Burundi 164th. So Uganda's competitiveness in the world, of course, especially in East Africa, seemingly is declining. We need to understand in all these particular indices, there are so many implementing agencies, little of them, which you're very familiar with, and perhaps you can enumerate. Is there some particular agencies that are weak in actually supporting the competitiveness performance of this of our policies in terms of easing business? And if so, don't we simply need either to expunge them and perhaps amalgamate some and make sure that we are more lean and effective in advancing these policies?
Thank you very much for that question. First of all, let me maybe just conclude on Andrew's response. The distance to the frontier basically says we progressed. The figures are clear, they are there. And in terms of our performance, as he says, other countries may have done better, and the methodology at times changes, and the communication that he talked about. Now, coming to specific institutions, yes and no. The indicator where we perform worst at 174, 73 out of 190 economies is basically getting electricity. And then
actually getting electricity is 173.
And
right. Starting a
I
business
thought you believed I was an expert on this.
All right. I was trying to cross-check the facts which I have, but okay. I apologize.
And the reason we perform so badly is that when you are basically talking about a typical company going to build a warehouse in this seat of ours, the tendency is that with respect to electricity, it will have to buy a generator because of the uncertainties about power. Although we have excess power, as we all know, this uncertainty about that. So you end up paying like 150 million. So in terms of, whereas other processes may work very well, the cost, when you are looking at the cost, the methodology factors in that cost of a generator. Now, I don't know whether to say umeme is bad or what, but there is where the challenge is. Now, the second one where we are challenged is about starting a business. Now, that's where your question may be alluding to. And starting a business in the context of the World Bank Doing Business report, it incorporates functions of 4 agencies. It is basically saying starting a business means you incorporate the company, which is a role of URSB, and it is being done very well. Number 2, that you get assessed as an assessment for tax, or you get a TIN number, which is a function of URA. Then 3, that you get a trading license, which is a function of KCC or a local government, and you get the NSSF number, which is NSSF. So it sees how many days, the time, cost, and procedures involved to do that totality. That's what it calls starting a business. Now, we already know that URSB possibly does that within hours to incorporate the entity. But because this includes other mandates of other institutions, then we end up being at 165th out of 190 economies. Now, what are we doing about that? And I think that's where the challenge is. We have argued with people who know IT and what have you. We have said what we really need to do is leverage on administrative reforms and IT, so that when I come to incorporate my company, I present one form, information, which should be used online by the other agencies, and I go to one point, do this, and all these other things should almost automatically come back to me with a process done. And that's how Rwanda does these things. Either you physically have one entity or you do it online. Now,
one-stop shop.
The challenge we have had is we have had some more lengthy discussions like in this country, because every agency is at different levels of integration. In terms of IT, has a mandate that either I'm collecting revenue now, how do I mix up my databases with others? And we have continued to have this debate around, and we are looking forward to resolving that very soon, including when we complete the construction of the Business Facilitation Center, which the Prime Minister launched earlier this end of last year, I think, at Kororo, for us to be able to have within...
Is that the one-stop shop center that has been talked about?
Basically, that has been talked about. It's already operating in some way, but now we'll be having actually building that houses many sister agencies like Uganda Investment Authority, Uganda Registration Services Bureau, and even Capital Markets Authority. But we'll have a floor, a ground floor, where about 15 public sector services will be being offered in one place. And we think as we move towards that, even the process of database integration and all that will be getting complete. Then within one, literally one interface with an official of government, you would get to have other things done back office and be able to reduce this to literally single digits, if not double digits. And we get out of one, we can get out of 165 basically within a bank. If we so
red tape is majorly actually the cause of the problem. So I'm going to go for a short break, Andrew, and when I come back, I just need to understand how participative the policy formulation in supporting these very indices that are being assessed is done. How cooperative, how engaging is the public or the business participatory community involved. And our viewers, thanks at least you got an introductory bit about what we're discussing. Let's come back and go into more detail about this matter after the short break. Thanks our viewers for keeping with us. This is NTV, I'm Karagawa Baldwins, and we're discussing the ease of doing business in this country. And several issues have been raised up from a report that is consistently being produced by the World Bank in partnership, of course, with the economic sector in different countries. So on Facebook and Twitter, we posted the question just to seek for your responses about what you view as the challenges faced by the Ugandan businesses. And let me just quote out three. Nikki says that taxes are really high. You find people with business not worth $1 million, but they pay more than 3 receipts a day, for example, the market vendors. And we're going to tackle that, the aspect of taxation. Mwamba Peace says, inadequate capital, hence leading to the problem and unplanned business plans, plus high tax rate. Taxation comes back there again. And Munyamede Senior says that the biggest challenge is lack of customers and high rent plus taxes. Taxes, taxes, taxes. So Andrew, of course the indices indicate, as Dr. Peter has been stating, that starting a business, the ranking is 165th, dealing with construction permits is 148th, getting electricity is the worst performing, 173rd, registering property 122nd, 24th, getting credit, quite surprisingly, the best performing, 55th, protecting minority investors 108th, paying taxes 84th, trading across borders 127th, enforcing contracts 64th, and resolving insolvency 113. How involved, of course, because these performances, these industry performances, they are a reflection of a response by either the policy implementers and the business community. So how involving is the process of generating reforms? And as you're also getting us to know how you involve the public, especially the business community, what reforms have actually been put in place to ensure that we get a positive performance?
Yes, thank you, and welcome back, viewers. On participation of the users in these policies, we deliberately involve the users before we carry out any reform to see if these reforms will be effective or will serve the end user. We carry out sensitization, we carry out workshops, and of course, at the end of the day, even when a policy goes to the parliament, it will be debated by the representative of the people. So
but you understand that most parliamentarians are politicians, and their business acumen or sensitivity or practicality is really far aloof from the real ground practice of business. So I need to understand, is there a direct engagement with the business community?
Maybe to make it in a perspective in a different way, we directly deal with the end users so much that we have collaboration of these organizations which affect these indicators. I'll give an example of the TRAPE model. The TRAPE is the Taxpayer Register Expansion Program. It's a collaboration of Uganda Registration Services Bureau, URA, KCCA, and where KCCA is not, we have the Ministry of Local Government. Now, we have gone to every municipality and established there what I would call a mini one-stop center. In order, one, to serve the people, so we reach the people instead of us going to Kampala to receive the services. You go to the TRAPE center, which is in every municipality in the country. 2, we collect information from the end user, which allows us now to know what the end user needs. We also carry out clinics, where we move in some areas where we do not have the TRAPE center or the offices of some of these organizations, and we get in touch with people. 1, we provide the service. 2, we collect information. In fact, we have even some mobile vans to simply do that. So we do whatever it takes to involve that end user. You'd imagine, like in Uganda here, sorry, in Kampala here, URSB has even an office in Nachivubo, specifically to know that this is where our clients are, these are the end users, to make sure we are in touch with them. So we involve them deliberately to make sure that we have them involved in whatever policy, whatever decision, whatever reforms.
So that's pretty comprehensive now.
And I add a quick one. I think let me add a quick one. The other way we engage with the private sector basically is through the associations like CASITA, Private Sector Foundation Uganda, Law Society, Uganda National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and even value chain platforms like the Coffee Group and the Maize Group. So we really make sure that stakeholders of the business constituencies are involved in the processes of doing business reform.
Okay, so it's specific, just about specific reforms that you have engineered to currently to make sure that actually we improve in how we're performing.
Yes, thank you. We have carried a number of reforms, maybe starting from the basic one, yet the most important, the creation of one-stop shop and including those trade centers. This is specifically to make sure that when a business person needs to start a business, he goes in one single place under one roof. He accesses services of URSB, that is registering the business. He accesses services of URA, that is acquiring a TIN. He accesses services of KCCA, that is getting a trading license, or where KCCA is not, he accesses services of through Minister of Local Government, again that is getting a license. He also gets the NSSF registration. So the client, you reduce the number of areas he would go, reducing the cost of starting a business. And also we have carried other reforms like removing or reducing the procedures. Specifically, I could give an example. In the starting of a business, World Bank ranked us having 13 procedures and taking 24 days in the starting of a business. We have so far, through the collaboration of those organizations, we have so far made reforms to reduce those procedures to 5 from 13. In a line of 1, making it easy for you to do business. 2, reducing the cost, because you will not incur cost of trotting around, going from one organization to another. So we have carried a number of reforms. We have also carried those mainly administrative, but we also carried legal reforms. Among others, currently we have the Company Amendment Bill, which is, among others, going to include what we call a single registration form. What does a single registration form do? The single registration form will be one single form where it collects data for you at registration, at company registration, but the data of these organizations, through their collaboration, is passed over to any other organization that requires the same data. So you do not have to go to these other organizations and they ask you the same data, which you have already submitted. This is the starting of a business, so it makes it cheaper for you to do business, because you don't go photocopying around different pages or coming back, say, oh, first certify this and that. So there is a number of changes, again, in a legal reform.
So let's just we'll keep on drawing back to them, because we need also to respond to the viewers. Dr. Peter, the issue of taxation, the business environment and practitioners are facing excessive taxation. The credit access environment is so repulsive because of high interest rates. How are those issues being addressed? Because you can have the establishment of a policy that eases people to start off the business, to access electricity. But if I'm feeling exploited or over squeezed in terms of what you're getting from me as government, it will repel me, and perhaps it will make me feel that this environment is not friendly.
Thank you very much. This is quite an interesting question, and especially currently as we prepare for the next budget process. So let me do this.
Introduced taxes.
Let me do this. Let me start with maybe a lighter one, the getting credit challenge. I think in that area we are making some breakthroughs.
55th position.
Okay, in terms of ranking, yes, we have made progress. And let me explain that, especially the average viewer may not appreciate that. We have improved, not that interest rates are down, but we have improved because the methodology recognizes that in Uganda we now have credit reference bureaus, so you can know whether Peter pays his debts or Andrew pays his debts or Baldwin pays his debts. So our ability for credit scoring and accessing that information is very useful for that.
And it's not preferenced on, rather premised on the issue of interest rates. Is that what you're implying?
Not interest rates as such.
Okay.
It's the main factor is that. And with the amendment to the Financial Institutions Act, I think the Article 78 or so, we are going to have to capture more data about your payment of the electricity, water and other bills, so that really it becomes easy to score you and be able to do that. And why that helps is that even when we start going to mobile loans and what have you, you know, some of this information helps to reduce the ability of the credit institutions to minimize the risk of lending me or you or the other in that perspective. But you also know currently with the movements around the CBR from the central bank, banks are actually responding. I think we are starting to get into, I've heard of 17%, 18, 19 plus or minus. So there is some progress, not good enough, but it is there. What I think the audience should know is that really this interest rate is a function of several things. One, where do you get the money from? Unfortunately, we don't have good savings culture. That's why I've been an advocate of investment clubs to pool money so that we use our money in our investments rather than borrowing at high interest as a starting point. Two, the cost of intermediation. So if banks find Baldwin pays his credit well and there is really no risks of default, interest rate is likely to go lower. Number three, the cost that is involved with having brick and mortar branches and what have you. Thank God now we can go online, use mobile. We are now going to agent banking where you can use the next supermarket, the next shop, the next circle, and the next gas station and what have you. All these are efforts, ongoing efforts that should help us reduce the cost of credit. So I think there is light at the end of the corner. Now, when you get taxes, there are several messages that come out there and you get a mambo jumbo, if I can call that. Generally, you want these taxes to be fair, to be predictable, and not to be too many, as you have talked about market vendors and what have you. On one aspect, since 2011, government put up a business licensing reform committee chaired by our former minister, Gerard Sendaura, and we have been looking at these other costs that relate to business licenses, permits, approvals, and what have you. And there is a process, an ongoing process, where we are rationalizing these things to make sure that where certain licenses and permits are not necessary, we get them out of the either law books or wherever they are. And we make sure that we bring them together under URSB, and basically you can be able to even know what they are. We have a portal at URSB that is doing that. And also later we would want this to be transactional so that the payments can be done there. So there are several things. Either at times the certainty, are you aware of them? Is it easy to pay? Is it convenient to compute? And so at the end of the day, you at times find that actually the challenge with the war about taxes is actually something that shouldn't be there. you shouldn't be paying taxes if you are not making profit, for example. A simple thing like that. Now, if you are not keeping records properly and all that, so somebody is likely to say, okay, I'm going to put there an estimate that you pay this because I have no certainty to know that you're actually not making credit. Allow me, Baldwin, just make one point that maybe could be important for today. This whole business or business environment should be put into context. If you are a company that is going to be progressive, there are three concerns. Yes, the business environment, the things around which, the things we are discussing. The second concern that you should be interested in is other players in the sector. So if you are in milk production, you have to be concerned about the people who are supplying feeds for animals, the people who are supplying the spray, what do we use for spraying ticks and what have you, and the people carrying milk in cans and the processors around there. That's what we call about the level, the supply chain, or the level of cluster development. You have to be concerned about the other actors you are dealing with. Then the third one, which may be most important, is your own operations. How are you organized? Are you operating a business that has the right scale? Are you doing good use of IT? Like now we have mobile processes, keeping records. Do you manage your workers well? Do you have workers of integrity? So three things. The business environment, yes, it's a subject we are discussing. The level of cluster development, the other actors in the value chain you're acting with, and we encourage associations. We encourage value chain platforms so that within those, even these challenges of poor inputs and poor planting materials, you can manage it by self-regulation. You know where you are going to buy your chemicals, where you are going to buy your seed, and if possible, you buy them yourselves in bulk and distribute them. So it's a very important point. And lastly, how you manage your own business, because some are concerned about issues before they really have a credible, sizable enterprise that they have thought through, that has processes that actually are going to guarantee them competitiveness or making profits or increasing profitability.
Pretty well explained. A whole view of the business environment and indeed a 360 degrees assessment. So let me just go for another short break. We come back and deal with the issues of the concept behind the ease of doing business and of course how we care about the hiking fuel prices, the threat of local businesses, of course, in the East African Common Market and the current African Free Trade Treaty that is being signed to. Thanks, our viewers. Let's go for a short break. I'll be back just to wind up on this. Our viewers for keeping with us, I'm Karaga Bodwins, and we're winding up on our discussion of this policy intricate matter of the ease of doing business in our country. And let me just have our panelists do a summarized roundup of this particular discussion. And there's an excitement about the whole matter, but I believe we have covered a tremendous tract of this. So, Andrew, let me start with you. Certain issues you just need to round up with, and then...
Thank you, and welcome back, viewers. One, I would state that viewers, we are doing whatever it takes to ease the starting of the business. This is an effort with a number of MDAs, that is ministry, departments and agencies, trying to make starting a business easier, reduce the cost of doing business, and reduce on the time of starting a business. Of course, we are doing a number of reforms. I will not go back to many of them, but it's important that I talk about the security interest and movable property law which is coming into place, which will allow that end user to even use his property, household property, to be able to access a credit. And this is again in the line of trying to make to ease business. We have put up a number of collaborating what I would call delivery points. As we talked about one-stop center, you are welcome, and maybe I would state that you can always reach us. We are trying to reach you in all sorts of the media. We are on Twitter and Facebook at URSB AQ. You can contact us there. We have a toll-free line, 0800 100 006. You can also reach us on email, ursb@ursb.go.ug. You are always welcome, and we are open to serve you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. Yes, Dr. Peter.
Well, thank you very much. So it's a pleasure to share with our audience about the reforms the government is taking to improve the business environment, to enhance our competitiveness. And competitiveness really is about productivity. And as I have already mentioned in the last segment, it's about the environment within which we operate. It's about the cluster or the value chain we work with. And it's about our individual business practices and processes that really matter with us. In terms of government and in totality, we continue to ensure we leverage whatever we have to ensure that we provide credible and efficient policy environment. We engage stakeholders, as I have told you, across the span, different government agencies, the private sector, development partners, and civil society. And if you may allow me, at the end of this month, 31st, Thursday 31st, we'll be having our 8th National Competitiveness Forum. We will be inviting you to come and engage in a more participatory process, which is what you really want. Within physically, you engage with different experts. We'll be having somebody from within the World Bank and people within the region to be able to talk about how we are enhancing efficiencies in terms of private sector delivery. In terms of leveraging the IT or information technology, you have had the forthcoming conference even about blockchain technology. We are engaged in processes that continue to reform the business registration that Andrew is talking about, licensing processes, and also reforms like the ongoing process you are hearing in the media, having a national investment policy, having a national industrialization policy to make sure that this country basically has credible and efficient policy framework to drive industrialization, to drive job creation, to ensure that our farms and enterprises are profitable based on productivity. So the process is on.
Yeah.
We can't get frustrated because part of the frustration, we do these policy processes within a political and socio-economic environment where the rains might be high and floods may hit Bududa and Soro and Kabale. You do all these things within a context that is progressive, but at times we face challenges.
True, and that is pretty succinct enough. And Dr. Peter Nga Tejizi, very peculiar name, Head Private Sector Development Unit, Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, and Andrew Kapiza, Chairman, is of Doing Business Community. Guys, you've been tremendously resplendent in explaining this phenomenon. And thank you. God bless.
Thank you very much.
Looking forward to seeing you again. Thanks our viewers for on this Friday evening for keeping with us on this particular policy discussion. We are going to proceed on with our normal programming. DJ Brian is coming on. I'm Karaga Boardrooms. Have a great night.